How's it going, everybody? My name is just Jared, but you can just call me Jared. Welcome to my loot review of the Ascent. It's like your typical review, except it's not, because I'm just reviewing the loot/item mechanics in the game, explaining in depth how they work and how well they work together, if they're fun, addictive, etc., culminating in a final loot score at the end. The gameplay you will be seeing is only up to level 10 gameplay, so still relatively early to avoid location, enemy, and story spoilers, but I will be showing off and talking about the highest quality gear in the game and some later game weapons, so spoiler warning for those. The goal is to get as much info from my mouth to your ears as quickly as possible in this review because there's a lot to go over, so let's begin. First off, the Ascent isn't your typical isometric hack-and-slash loot-driven game like Diablo is. I would say it's pretty far off from Diablo, with the only similarities being that it is isometric and you are picking up items that drop from enemies. The loot categories in the Ascent are as follows. You got your weapons, all of which are guns, armor, which consists of helmets, body armor, and leg armor, tacticals, which are essentially your grenades, but they can be substituted for other deployable gadgets, augmentations, which act as your abilities, of which you can have 2 equipped at once, upgrade modules, which are small passive upgrades to your character, also can have 2 equipped at once, cyber deck upgrades, simply upgrade your cyber deck when obtained, there's no real customization or choice with these, components that you use to upgrade your guns, shirt patterns that are solely cosmetic items that change your shirt under your armor, and weapon skins are also solely cosmetic and they change the look of your weapons, obviously. Also, all armor and all weapons have unique visuals, which is very important for visual progression, awesome stuff. Now, most of those items I just listed can be obtained from enemy drops, chests, lockers, and merchants. This makes the Ascent unique in a way that your abilities are strictly tied to the ones you actually find. In most cases, if we're thinking about other hack-and-slash or loot-based titles, this would be pretty bad because you'd have to rely on luck to get what you want, and when talking about abilities, that directly affects a focal point of your character's damage output or survivability. In the Ascent, however, not only is all the loot handcrafted, but I believe at which point you get certain loot drops is also pre-designed in a way that you get a certain item either around a specific time, in a set location, or from a specific enemy. This way you're not relying on luck, it's mainly the devs controlling when and where you get certain loot without you realizing it. The fact that there are no loot rarities in the game also helps to prove this point, because without rarity you're never solely relying on luck, everything has the same drop chance. All that decides drops are which type of enemies you're fighting and how far you are in the game, i.e. what level you are. The different colors of gear simply indicate quality, not rarity, said here by creative director Arcade Berg. As you level up and progress through the game, you'll progressively find higher quality gear more and more. You'll never find a purple quality helmet at level 5 or something because it's not based on luck and rarity, it's based on enemy types and your level. With all that being said, if you're ever seeking out a certain item, you can technically find out what enemy drops it and go find it without having to rely on chance. Or if you just want to test my theory, head to the Deep Stink and take out some ferals. You'll get a bunch of shockwave grenade tacticals, or find a guy with a minigun, he'll drop the minigun, or take out an Onyx Void mercenary to get his helmet. Let's go a bit more in depth with the gear qualities. First off, your tactical gear and modules do not have different qualities. All of them have their pros and cons just based on what they do and what their charge levels are. As far as armor and augmentations go, there's 5 different qualities. You've got peach, bronze, silver, gold, and purple, with purple being the highest quality and peach being the lowest. The easiest way to explain how the qualities differ from each other is the higher the quality, the higher the defense numbers are. This isn't always the case, but for the sake of simplification, we're going to go with that. Qualities of augmentations work a bit differently. Better color on augmentations means they're currently scaling well with your spec'd into attributes. For example, if we look at my character's stat sheet, you can see that my biometrics is my highest attribute, sitting at 42, so all my augmentations that benefit from a higher biometrics attribute are purple in color, signifying that these ones fit my build the best. That worked out really well for me because throughout the entirety of much of the late game, I solely used biometric timestamp to basically save state my health and IO converter to shred through machine enemies like butter, and both of these get even stronger the more points I have in biometrics, which is how I built my character from the beginning to be a tank. Getting back to armor, let's talk about stats, attribute bonuses, boosts, and visuals. Every piece of armor comes with 4 different defense stats, the top one being ballistic, which is basically your defense to regular bullets. The lightning bolt stands for energy, which is your defense to energy weapons. Any enemy that shoots like blue bullets or lasers is energy. The third from the top is digital, and I can't find literally any information as to what enemies deal digital damage. My best guess is that it helps versus enemies that use hacks and tech, but I'm not exactly sure, so if you know and are watching, let me know, and let me know how you know, because the internet and the discussions page on Steam didn't help me out with this one. And last is pyro, pretty explainable, defense to fire. Armor can also come with bonuses to attributes and passive boosts, which are the 2 sections underneath the defenses respectively. These can be confusing as to what they actually do and how they differ. Any bonuses to attributes adds that number to your attributes on your character's page. They solely exist to beef up your augmentations. Boosts, on the other hand, passively increase one of your skills, but you don't actually see the number or the stat increase on your skills page or an increase in that skill's associated attribute. Whether or not this is a bug or intended, I don't know. For example, my character has 4 points into critical hit rate, giving me a 5.66% rate increase. If I equip this visor that gives me a boost of 2 to critical hit rate, my actual skill is still sitting at 4 and 5.66%. The game says it's a passive boost, but there's nowhere to know exactly how much the boost does or if it's actually doing anything. This is one system that could really use some improvement. Something just to visually show what effect boosts are having on your character would be nice. Not knowing what my boosts are doing made me prioritize attributes over them every time because I know the effect they have on my character. Last but not least, for armor, how good does armor look? And I think for the genre the Ascent is in, there's a pretty good diverse selection of styles that seems to encompass the kind of build you're going for while still maintaining that cyberpunk vibe. My tank build, for example, ended up looking like this. He's got like 4 metal arms, a tough looking helmet, and some beefed up heavy duty legs. He looks like he could take some hits, and he can because that same armor gives him the most defense and the best bonuses to the attributes and skills I need to tank as much as I can. But if you're going for a more movement based build with priority on evasion, crit rate, and tactical sense, there's a good chance you'll look more sleek, stylish, and techy instead of big and bulky. And you're able to change your main and support colors of your armor anytime you want, which is a nice feature. Onto weapons. The Ascent has 6 weapon classes: sidearms, machine guns, shotguns, precisions, excessive, and special. You've got things like submachine guns, multiple shotguns that deal different damage types, burst rifles, miniguns, rocket launchers, and a bunch more, including special weapons that are super unique and dope that are often tied to side quests or secret locations. I'm not going to spoil those. All weapons have the same stat sheet that shows its damage per shot, damage per second, damage type, fire mode, rounds per second, clip size, reload time, and knockback amount. When comparing to equipped weapons, green numbers mean an increase in stats, red numbers mean decrease, and blue means neither an increase nor a decrease. Simple stuff. It gets less simple when you're looking at damage types and trying to figure out what types of damage work best against what enemies. The game doesn't verbally tell you, so you have to experiment. Basically, if you're seeing gray damage numbers, you're doing little to no damage, white numbers means average damage, and red numbers is optimal damage. All weapons start out at peach quality level and Mark 1. You spend weapon components found in chests and around the world at a gunsmith to increase weapon levels, which increases the damage and in turn upgrades the quality. Every time you upgrade a weapon, the cost to upgrade becomes greater. You'll need 11 basic components, 6 advanced, and 3 superior to fully upgrade a weapon. The basic and advanced components are relatively abundant, but the third component, superior, is very limited and you need 3 of them to fully upgrade a weapon. If you get every single component in the game, you'll only ever be able to max out 4 different weapons, so you have to choose to spend your superior components wisely. Also, your weapon upgrades persist across every version of the gun you pick up, so let's say you sell your Mark 10 pistol, when that pistol drops for you again, it'll be Mark 10. I really wish there was like a dismantle option to get your components back, or some kind of indication as to how many superior components are obtainable in the game, because you either end up spending your superior components on a weapon you think you'll always be using, only to get something better, then never touch your fully upgraded one ever again. It ends up just being a waste of components. Or you're like me and you keep saving them because you don't know how many there are until roughly the end of the game you finally realize you're probably safe to spend them, but 2 hours later the game is over and all the quests are done and you never really got to use the guns at their full power unless you just run around killing guys aimlessly for no reason. As far as weapon feel goes, every weapon has pros and cons to them. Some kind of feel the same as others in my opinion, and there's definitely a few standouts in terms of damage output. I can definitely see some balancing updates being made to the game in the near future if that's something the devs are even interested in doing. That being said, I haven't used every single weapon. There could be even better ones than the ones I ended up using. I kind of just stuck with the huge excessive weapons because that's what I imagine a tank character would carry. I do have a slight issue with how late in the game you get certain weapons. It's kind of weird for there to be certain guns that you don't get until like the last 2 main missions, or they're in areas that you regularly wouldn't be in until those missions. What ended up being my favorite gun in the game was the last gun I ever obtained. Is it super powerful? I think so, yeah, but I'd much rather it be less powerful if it meant I would get it earlier and actually be able to use it in a meaningful way for more than a single hour of the last mission in the entire game. Another complaint I have, although it's really just me nitpicking at this point, I kinda expected the guns to progressively get more and more crazy visually. Maybe some like neon lights or holograms on them, something to set them apart from the much earlier guns. But they kinda all just have the same style to them. None of them visually stand out much more than the others, which is a bummer. They don't look terrible or anything, but they don't look as enticing as the armor or the world you're in does. And I would have loved a weapons locker, just a locker, somewhere in the main hub of Cluster 13 where I could store one of each weapon. My initial goal was to keep all of them, but I got really tired of how full my inventory was all the time. Also, you have to be careful when selling unique weapons that don't drop from enemies, like quest rewarded weapons or weapons you find in a unique area that are just like randomly propped up against a vehicle or something, because if you sell them, you're not getting them back, like I did, on accident. A buyback feature would certainly help with that, but I don't see the reason for not having something like a weapons locker or a collection of weapons to just pull from. Moving on, the act of actually obtaining loot, I like. Having the location of loot and chests on the map is crucial because of how confusing the map and the world layout can be at times. The hacking mechanic with ice and your cyber deck is cool, no problems with that at all. It's just another way the devs control when you're able to open certain doors and chests to get certain loot. You have to have the right cyber deck clearance, which means you have to explore and gain access to areas via the main missions to find those cyber deck upgrades. It's also cool to revisit earlier areas to loot the stuff you didn't have access to before and absolutely slaughter all the enemies there that gave you trouble in the past. It works as a good sense of power progression, which is nice. And now we've made it. My overall thoughts on the loot and loot mechanics, the final paragraph of this info-filled, monotonously delivered, immensely edited, absolute spectacle of a video. The final loot score of my loot review of The Ascent. Please note, I'm not comparing The Ascent's loot to other games that are nowhere near what The Ascent is, like Diablo. We're not comparing loot systems here. I'm looking at everything loot-wise with The Ascent and The Ascent alone. Everything we just talked about combined into one final score that really doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things because I'm just a YouTuber with 6,000 subscribers, but these kind of videos are fun to me, so I do them anyways. The Ascent scores a whopping 8 unknown passive boosts out of 10. 8 out of 10. A lot of it is really great. The mild frustrations with armor boosts not being clear, the few weapons not showing up till super late in the game, coupled with how samey some weapons feel and the lack of visual weapon variety is basically why I gave it an 8. Still a very solid scoring. Editor, throw in some applause sound effect. Big congrats to the Neon Giant devs. You all rock, you did it. 8 out of 10. None of them are watching this. I realize I didn't talk really at all about the different tacticals and augmentations, and the reality is all of them feel pretty good and cool to use. I switched up my tactical and augmentations a lot throughout my first playthrough. None of them really felt useless to me, some just fit my build more than others. Plus the augmentations are some of the coolest things of the game, all come equipped with gorgeous effects and animations, and I don't really want to spoil any of them for you if you haven't played yet or haven't gotten some of them. And that's it for my loot review on The Ascent. I hope you enjoyed it. A lot of work goes into these loot reviews, so leave a like so the 5 million hours I spent mindlessly staring at my computer screens editing this gets noticed by more people. If you want to have as much fun as this guy is having, then check out this playlist of games similar to The Ascent right here that have tons of loot and items. Big thanks to my Patreon supporters Ryan, Kyle, and Vanilla. Thanks for watching. Have a good one. Peace out.